You're listening to the official podcast of the Games Institute at the University of Waterloo. The Games Institute is a research center located at the University of Waterloo, and all of our researchers are doing something with games-related research or interactive technologies. The purpose of this podcast is to invite on some researchers from the Institute and get them talking about the research that they do without the constraints of having to think about word counts or jargon. They just sit down, talk about what they get up to, and share with you some of the important findings. And, of course, we always leave time for our researchers to talk about what games they are playing. I'm Marisa Benjamin. I'm the Research Communications Coordinator for the Games Institute. My job is to figure out what everybody is researching, what the purpose of their research is, and how to get that information out to you, the public. Today I'm joined by Rina Wehbe.
Hi, I'm Rina Wehbe. I'm a PhD candidate here at University of Waterloo, and I'm cross-affiliated between the Sheridan School of Computer Science and the Games Institute.
And Rina, what do you study?
So I study computer science with a focus on large interactive displays and how we collaborate around them. I generally focus on playful interactions as part of my research, but I'm also looking at productivity, learning, and expert design.
Excellent. So, Rina, I asked you to join us today because you have some pretty awesome research projects that are open, and you're also involved with a lot of things at the Games Institute. So we're going to get to know you a little bit better, and then we're going to talk about some of the projects that you have worked on in the past and maybe some studies that you have open. And then we're going to move into something a little more fun by the end of the episode. We're going to talk about games. So to begin, I want to get a sense of what your academic biography is. So what did you start out studying, and where are you now?
So when I first entered undergraduate studies, I actually started with a degree in psychology. And just out of interest, I have undeclared minor in chemistry as well that I didn't declare as a full minor. And at first, I had no idea what I wanted to study. My idea was to start with neurochemistry, psychology, and eventually I started working for a company called Interaxon as an intern. And really, it became a question of, well, how do I get this job? And that job was creating games with purpose, creating games for change.
Yes, that's great.
Afterwards, I ended up doing my master's at University of Ontario Institute of Technology in Oshawa. I actually got a chance to retrain myself and learn new skills as a Master's of Computer Science student there. And that was really great for me because I discovered a whole new field and a whole new career path. So instead of pursuing clinical psychology or neuropsychology, I ended up in computer science, human-computer interaction. Now, human-computer interaction is especially interesting for me because it blends my two backgrounds of psychology and computer science. So when it came time to choose what to do my PhD in, I had a choice. And for me, I think I really reflect my research interests when I say that I chose computer science, I chose to continue in computer science and make a contribution to the user experience or the experience that we have when we're using interfaces. And it also gives me a chance to pursue games for change and games research.
Awesome. Yeah, I found it really interesting when I learned that you originally started in psychology and then now you're in computer science, because that's not necessarily an intuitive jump. But after learning about your research, especially what you did with Above Water, it made a lot of sense. And when you say games for change, games that impact people, and then of course you need both, right? You can't just be a programmer without some background in how people behave. So that must work really well hand in hand.
So I really love computer science because it gives us a chance to both design tools to solve problems as well as design tools for others to solve their own problems with. And really, with computer science, it gives you a whole new sort of breadth of opportunity. And it's really great to be here at Waterloo and cross-affiliated with the Games Institute because you meet a lot of people who support your research here.
That's excellent. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about what you mean that way. But before we kind of move too far away from your academic biography, I've always wanted to know how you acquired your programming skills, because I started out in psychology and my brain in no way works like a computer science person. So it's always inspiring to me when I hear about somebody who has kind of a similar background learning coding. I would love to do that one day.
And really, you can. Actually, I think anyone can. When you ask me how I learned, I kind of answer sideways.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so I didn't have the typical background when stepping into computer science, and I didn't have the time to acquire it regularly. So my first few courses in computer science, it was very much a learning opportunity for me and a new experience. So kind of like, you know what they say, out of the frying pan into the fire, just right away. And really, I feel like I learned it sideways because I acquired different subjects as I went over time, reading on my own. And of course, by sitting in through classes and taking advantages of the resources that are around us all the time to learn, to code, to learn to do new things. And I'm not talking just YouTube, but I'm talking about like auditing classes or going to online learning courses or, sitting down with others or even just reviewing open source projects. And those sort of things really help me learn how to think like a programmer. And then eventually, now I'm at the level where I'm teaching an intro programming course.
Wow.
It's really great to be able to talk about the acquisition of the skill because people really see it as being a huge leap or a huge jump. But really, I think anyone has the capability to learn to code, and we should really be providing people with more opportunities for it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I wish I had more people who were pushing me to learn coding when I was still in learning mode. But one day I'm going to go back to it. I know.
You can do it.
And so it's really awesome to hear you talk about how the two blend together because I went from thinking, yeah, it's a big leap, but now it's almost like, how do you parse the two?
I think the more you're into PhD studies and the more you learn about the world, the more you realize that these dividers between subjects that we put are really flexible.
Yeah.
And pretty much invisible at the end of it. Really, like, if I were to tell you there's not a huge divide between chemistry and biology, especially given that there's the whole field of biochemistry, you'd believe me easily. But the more you study, the more you realize that really we start to cross on huge concepts such as digital games or digital society. You can find an English major studying that, a computer science major studying that, and anyone in between.
Yeah, that's what I love too about the Games Institute because we kind of call ourselves the island of misfit toys. Nobody belongs directly inside their own discipline, strictly speaking. They kind of want to exist between and across disciplines. And then they come together and you can end up with, computer science and psychology person working with an English major who's also interested in sociology and systems design. You get all of these interactions happening. And then projects that come out of that cover more bases than any one pure project could.
So at the Games Institute, what's especially nice is interdisciplinary is no longer just a buzzword. You really get a chance for people to be interdisciplinary. And oftentimes we say, we want interdisciplinary thinkers. We want people with the ability to cross these borders. But it's very hard for people to not just stay nested in their fields. So when people take those risks and they cross those boundaries, they begin to see, why didn't I do this in the beginning? Why did I think this was hard? But until you make that cross, it still feels very intimidating. And a lot of times it really is just a buzzword when they say they want someone interdisciplinary. So finding these spaces is really important, especially for research like mine.
How did you first find the Games Institute?
So completely by accident. So when I was trying to figure out where to do my PhD or to move directly into industry, I had a bunch of options that I was considering. And eventually I found my way to Waterloo. And a huge part of Waterloo is the Games Institute. You can't really be around campus and doing this sort of research without hearing a bit about the up and coming stuff that's coming out of the Institute. So it kind of like pulls you right in.
When you were at the University of Ontario Institute of Technology, is that when you first met, where you first came into contact with HCI Games Group and that type of work?
The HCI Games Group, headed by the director, Leonard Nacky, actually did have affiliation between UOIT and Waterloo Games Institute now. And it's also an interdisciplinary body in the sense that it's affiliated with psychology, systems design, computer science, and arts and drama and speech communication. It has members that were graduated from University of Ontario Institute of Technology, that will graduate from University of Waterloo, and that will graduate from Stratford campus. So really what Leonard's done is he's gotten this group together of very diverse researchers, and he constantly pulls in international students all the time to work in the Games Institute, to work in Stratford.
Yeah, and then you get the opportunity to meet them and work with them too.
Yeah. So it's really a brilliant opportunity, and I'm lucky to have come across it.
Yeah, so for context, the HCI Games Group is the Human Computer Interaction Games Group, and they currently have space inside the Games Institute, and they're affiliated with the other residents there and collaborate with the residents at the Games Institute as well. And Leonard Naki, as you said, is the director, and he's also your PhD supervisor?
So Leonard actually is a co-supervisor on my PhD. Although I'm situated in the Sheridan School of Computer Science, I'm supervised as well by Edward Lank. So it's kind of an interesting relationship between the two faculties. So whereas I'm primarily situated in computer science, I do have this opportunity to be cross-affiliated with the Games Institute and co-supervised by Leonard Naki as well. So it's a really interesting mix between the two supervisors, where one is more a methodist, where in that case where Ed would look at the pure HCI concepts and sort of like the more traditional productivity applications. He also looks at how we can use HCI to influence and improve on products, input, and ubiquitous computing design. And that's been a huge influence on my research, as well as Leonard Naki, who works on games user research and really gives me a chance to work on games for change.
Excellent. So a lot of the students, the reason why we are kind of teasing out these details is because the students that are in the Games Institute the majority of them are working with supervisors and professors who help guide their research, but it's like it's a recursive relationship. So, you help Leonard Naki with his research and he helps you, and he introduces you to these international students, and you work with his other students, and you create this web of connections. And then when you work at the Games Institute, you also sit and collaborate with other residents. So it's these, like, none of these research projects come about in a vacuum anymore when you're at the Games Institute. You're working with Diane Watson, for example, on Above Water. Like, all of these connections get formed, and I think that is one of the true advantages of working at the Games Institute.
Yeah, and it's actually a really great way to meet people is through supervisors and through these interconnections that have already been made. But also we get this kind of interesting just being proximate. Being across the hall from First Person Scholar made me join First Person Scholar in a way.
You were the web editor.
Yeah, so I was their web manager, and I continue to be, but now with the finishing of my degree, I'm passing on that role, so they're hiring, guys.
Yeah, and that's an excellent opportunity. You have been involved in a lot of things at the Games Institute. So that was another question I was going to have for you. The First Person Scholar happened because you were proximal, but what about the other opportunities that you've taken at the Games Institute? How have you jumped on those?
So some things happen because of proximal, some things happen because of interconnectedness between people, as we said. And sometimes you have a crazy idea and the Games Institute lets you go with it. So, for example, Above Water was a research project that I started, and it's the idea that we're going to reduce stigma around mental health by taking this educational approach through gaming. So creating this safe environment for conversation and community, but also pulling in that mobile application to keep things both tabletop as well as on screen, both public conversation amongst a group, as well as your own private device where you can look up things yourself. So for this crazy idea, I actually asked the Games Institute for their support, and I was very lucky to find it. There's also some really great leadership opportunities that you can have at the Games Institute. For example, there is the International Game Developers Association chapter that I ended up founding while I was here, and now it's in its second iteration, and it's being passed on to its next leader, Andrew Lin Sen, and he's actually going to go on from there with the club and make it his own. While I was a part of the IGDA academic chapter here, we got to do showcases with classes that were working on games research or game development. And we also got to do some networking. I have some artists and some programmers come in and talk to students. It was a really great way to create this interconnectedness. And that was just something that I wanted to do, and I asked for permission and support, and
you got it.
Yeah.
So when you say bringing in people internationally or bringing in people from the network, can you talk a little bit more about that?
So what I mean by that is that the International Game Developers Association is a worldwide association with local chapters. So what you can do is you can meet people through the association and link together and then put events through your academic chapters. So for example, the Global Game Jam is something that we would take advantage of as part of the chapter, and it's still ongoing. It was ongoing before the chapter even. And that's one way where people get connected all around the world and build a game in under 48 hours. So a lot of the people that are interested in these events are also part of the IGDA, although it's not a one-to-one relationship. You have a chance to meet people. You have a chance to find these idea starters. And it was really nice to connect with them and connect with people around the world who are part of this organization and have a local chapter at the Games Institute.
So were you doing that as a part of your research? Or was that something that you decided would be helpful or beneficial to you as professional development?
So it was more a chance to get connected, a chance to network, and a chance to learn skills outside of my research area. And that's really what pulled me into it. But I'm sure for many, they might find research opportunities through it or in it.
Ah, I see. So we absolutely need to circle back to Above Water and give that its due, because that is an incredible project. Okay, I'm going to just say what I know about Above Water, and then I'll let you take the baton, talk about it. So when I first learned about Above Water, it was when Ted Hewitt visited us. He's the president of SSHRC, which is the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. He came to visit and check out the Institute, and you and him got to talking about Above Water. So I got to watch from the sidelines as you explained this project to the president of SSHRC. So that was incredible. But basically, you were talking about how it's a digital and physical game. It integrates both of those components, and it's a game for impact. So it helps people destigmatize talking about anxiety, and they can learn treatment options and create strategies while collaborating with other players.
Part of my interests are games for change and games with purpose. I really think that games can do a lot, and they're often underestimated, and I kind of wanted to find a way to help people. Oftentimes, have you ever heard of that quote? I don't know who said it, but everyone in grad school has a little bit of save the world in them.
I don't know if I've heard that quote, but I totally believe that.
Yeah, so I heard this once. Everyone has a bit of save the world in them, and that's why you're in grad school. And really, I would love to look for opportunities where my skill set can be applied to positive change. Being someone with a background in games user research and some expertise in gaming, I thought this was a great way to apply my skills for the better. So my idea was, how can I help people just even around me? And of course, graduate school has been discussed many times in many different forms about being a place where mental illness and seeking help is not very well executed. So we really need more opportunities for people to get resources and to talk and to be educated about it. But part of the reasons that people are really afraid to seek this information or to seek treatment is the stigma. And the stigma around mental health is huge. And even knowing this, even knowing that the stigma exists, it still stops people.
Yeah.
So the idea here was, how could I use my skills to help? So I thought of this game, and I wanted to think about a tabletop game at first, because tabletop games have been shown through research to create this sense of community, this sense of belonging, this idea of a small magic circle, which you step into, and then you get to play the game and sort of be in that safe space. But mental illness, and especially anxiety, is trademarked by not wanting to say the wrong things, wanting to hide your, your symptoms, wanting to, kind of close off about that topic. So really, privacy is a really important matter here. So that's where the digital component it comes in, and you can play this game.
Yeah.
You can have that sense of community, but you can also have your own private device where You can look up terms you don't know. You can input questions to topics that come up in the game. You can play mini games. And when you're done with the game, you still have your device. You have the game open. You have trusted resources right there in front of you.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So that's the idea. Yeah. I can try and leverage community, try and leverage getting help from others, being in this safe space, as well as preserve people's privacy. Because when it's a 4-player game or a 4-player group, you might not want to say, I don't actually know anything about this, but you might get the opportunity to ask via a share card, or you might get a chance to think about mental illness from a standpoint you didn't. And a lot of it, too, is trying to target like myths, like myth busting, what's really true about mental illness, and what should you know about it, and where could you find the right information?
Yeah.
Where are the trusted resources? What happens if I need to refer someone somewhere? Do I know where to go? Do I know where to send people?
Yeah. So how did you find that information to include into the game?
So I started with getting medical offices, their brochures, trusted like organizations such as Center Addiction for Mental Health, and Canadian government resources. But then I started working with people internationally, and they started asking, well, what about American resources? What about international resources? So then it became sort of collecting, and the interface is designed in such a way that we can consistently keep adding to these resources as we find them.
Yes, because it's digital, you can do that.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is that to preserve privacy, we're not saving information about the player, but instead we're adding to our database of facts and myths and resources. So
wow, that's so impressive. Yeah.
Thank you.
So was Above Water something that was inside of the PhD that you're working towards? Was it something that you decided to add on separately? How does it fit into the overall scheme of your research?
So I was inspired by Chrysan's DeMarco's Games for Health course. In it, we had the opportunity to make a project, and I really saw it as, hey, this is my chance. I want to try something.
Cool.
And, you find a group project. You find somebody who listens out to your ideas, whether or not they stay on the project. It's still good to get your ideas out there, talk to your TA, talk to your prof, talk to your class. And then eventually I started talking to people at the Games Institute, and I found that Diane was interested, and then Colin was interested, and suddenly we have a team. And then as I started traveling to conferences, I actually really have to thank Jessica Hammer here for introducing me to Anna Radovic at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. So Jessica Hammer from Carnegie Mellon and Anna Radovic were both interested in the project, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah. What do you hope to do with it now?
Right now we're working on a study with mental health care providers, as well as the Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh, to look at how the game design may currently be reaching its goals of causing people to learn new things and to start conversations and reduce stigma.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so after we take this academic approach to this testing, I would like to publish it in the future. And I think it'll be going back to the Games Institute for help with that.
Great. So I'm sure by this point, the listeners are going to be wondering how they can play it. Is there any chance that people can come and play it at the Games Institute?
The game is currently not open for public use. However, to learn more information about the game, there is a website, which we will include in the link below. And you can also email me directly or read the published research.
Where are you currently in your candidacy for the PhD? And what still needs to be done in order for you to snatch that diploma?
So I'm about to do my second comprehensive, and hopefully we'll need about a year to finish up writing. And then I hope to move towards the next stage of the process, which would be getting approvals to defend. So I'm not very far from the end, but I'm not that close either.
Do you have any idea of what you want to do after?
So for me, I actually want to explore my options in both industry and academia to see whether or not I want to stay in academia or move on to a job in industry. And of course, there's lots of subjects to pursue, and it'll be a very big decision when the time comes. Right now, I'm open for inquiries and job hiring. So if you're out there listening,
Well, no matter what you do, you're going to be a trailblazer for sure.
thank you.
Like this conversation about mental health and destigmatizing that is extremely crucial. And I think that you are absolutely doing the right things. And, we're lucky to have you.
Thank you so much.
So I'm going to reveal something now. This is breaking news, but Rina, you're actually going to be one of our panelists on the upcoming panel next month, by the time this publishes. So it's going to be about cooperative games.
So actually in that paper, I had written a small pre-study for it, and I was actually interested in how co-attention changes the way we play together.
Oh,
So for example, both of us looking at a third item or a third display, and how does that change versus sitting non-co-located like online versus having, co-located couch co-op. And really the question arising from that study was, do we really need to play with human teammates, or do we just need to think that our teammates are human?
Cool.
So it was a double-blind study that actually explored how our perceptions of whether or not the person we're playing with is truly human changed our enjoyment of the game. And it was actually really interesting because in the game Left 4 Dead, which gave the title Leave Them for Dead, people actually identified the speech that was programmed into the game as the most human aspect, but really human players were not responsible for that at all. And it was really interesting to see how people reacted to finding out they were playing with humans or they were playing with avatars. And you'd even find some people that were playing the game talking to the game or to the screen, sorry, would help you, but you're just an AI. And then find out that they actually weren't. So
Wow.
it was a really interesting study and a really fun one to conduct.
So because I'm not necessarily familiar with how a computer science study would run, how do you land on choosing a game like Left 4 Dead?
So I picked Left 4 Dead particularly because it focuses on collaboration, and it does so via shared tools and non-hidden interfaces. You can see if I have a health pack if you're playing with me. So I can't say, sorry, don't have one. So it kind of forces collaboration. And because it does have this reliance on collaboration, you cannot get through the game without a team. It was an ideal choice for a study about collaboration.
So were you a fan of Left 4 Dead before you started studying it?
So when I played Left 4 Dead, I immediately saw that it was a game that relied on collaboration as a mechanic. So, for example, if you fall off a ledge, there's no way to pull yourself up. You need a teammate. So, for that reason, I thought it was especially interesting for looking at collaboration with people in games.
So because of that work and some other work that you do with collaborative screens, I thought that you'd be a great fit for this cooperative panel.
Thank you so much. So the body of my PhD thesis is actually looking at how people collaborate around large displays and how we can design displays to accommodate for multiple people collaborating, interrupting each other, making room, or hogging the space.
Yeah, I just saw your video because I was at GradFlix last week. So Rina created a video and was one of the top 15 finalists for GradFlix. And the video was all about your work with large displays.
Yeah, exactly. So the video actually is a 1-minute overview of my PhD topic. So the idea was to introduce people to displays being on the wall, large displays over 3 meters, on the floor, so we can interact with our feet, or even on our own bodies, such as watches or personal displays.
Because what I'm trying to get a sense of is what the relationship is between your own personal gameplay and how that affects your research, and then vice versa. So if you know, for example, that your own play experience can be affected by your perception of who you're playing with, does that change how you then go and play games? But then also how much of your research is inspired by gameplay?
That's a really great question, actually. And to be honest, I kind of play games, stop, think, hey, this would be a great idea. Write it down, unpause, keep playing. And sometimes they're great ideas, sometimes they're not. And it's actually really interesting because sometimes when you're playing the game and you're thinking about the game and you're really relaxed, it's really a great opportunity for that creative thought that stress might inhibit normally. So playing games is actually kind of an interesting way that helps me kind of think of society and research problems.
Yeah, so you totally write it off as study time when you're playing a game. Yeah, you get that good idea, and then the entire hour was worth it. So what kind of games do you play?
So I try and dabble into as many games as I can, but really I enjoy playing adventure, RPG, first-person shooter, that sort of thing.
Very cool.
And I really like games that cross genres. Some of my favorite games have to do with collaboration, surprise, surprise. For example, Portal 2, love it. Love Portal 1 as well. But I especially love the collaborative factors of Portal 2, and I thought the high-fiving was genius. So, hey, if you're out there listening, Valve people, great work. But I also really love the entire Zelda series, and I think one of my goals is to play every Zelda game before I die, but they keep making new ones, so yeah. So it's a real mixture of games. I really love exploring indie games on Steam and on the platforms that let people reach out, and I really love breaking games too. So sorry, Andy.
That's interesting. So I understand why you're interested in cooperative games in your research, because that's a really excellent way to get people playing together and to create games for change. But why do you think that you are drawn to playing cooperative games?
I think it's the playing cooperative games that led to the research.
Oh, okay, so you figured out that connection because you knew firsthand? Because of your experiences?
Because I really see games as a social environment. I think that really fuels the way that I think about games when we move on to collaborative research. Because if you're thinking about games and you're underestimating games, then you're not really looking at it as a space for research, right? But I guess the idea is that everything kind of blends together when you research, right? Because your research is hopefully applicable to life. Yeah, you shouldn't be doing research in a vacuum. So every experience you have might come up with a new research idea. You can't just sort of put that divider in your mind. This is research and this is not.
Yeah. So games for change, is there anything more than the mental health conversation? Or do you think mental health is where you best sit with? Because there are games for change, for example, that talk about helping the environment, or games that go into maybe politics. But everything has so much potential. And we need a lot of attention in so many different spaces. So where personally do you think that you would want to be investing your attention?
So I try and choose subjects that are important to me. And important to what I see around me. And I think, even if you lose one person, it's one person too much when it comes to mental health. And I really don't like to see people suffer. So I would love a way to help them. But there's a lot of topics that I feel like Games for Change could lend a hand. And some of the games that I've been inspired by is like Jane McGonigal's work with not only Super Better, but also helping empower people in developing countries by showing that their experiences can contribute to solutions, right? So helping empower people is another thing that I think is super important, because I think everyone should practice self-care, but everyone should also try their best to care for each other.
Can you talk a little bit more about the games that have inspired you?
There's a lot of games that I find very inspiring, some of which I just mentioned. Others include A World Without Oil, which is actually an alternate reality massive player game, which people actually pretend in their real world that they're in a world without oil and contribute to the game in that way. I thought that was a very interesting way of getting people to kind of think about the real consequences things can have on life, especially in environmental change. And it's these smaller games that are very creative, that have a lot of ideas, that tend to inspire me the most, because I feel like there are people that make games to make games, and then there are people that make games to make art.
Well, okay, wow, that was a beautiful quote there, Rina. So I think we should just start closing out. Can you talk a little bit about where people are going to be able to see you this term, what you have going on?
Well, aside from teaching here at University of Waterloo, I'm also going to a few conferences this year. This year, I'm social media chair for CHI, so Computer-Human Interaction.
And this is your second year in a row doing that.
Yeah, and it's taking place in Glasgow. I'm also going to be one of the co-chairs for accessibility and diversity this coming CHI Play. Wow. So hopefully I'll get a chance to come out to that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and of course you can always find me online via my website or email me directly.
Nice. And very last question for you before we send everybody off. What do you think everybody needs to play right now?
If you could ask a whole bunch of people to play just one game, what game could have enough impact, enough of a story, enough of a challenge that you personally recommended as everyone should play?
Okay, well, when you put it that way, yes, that's a really challenging question.
I think I do want to give a shout out to games like Left 4 Dead and Portal because of their collaboration mechanics. I think they're absolutely really cool. And I think people should also check out their local art museums for digitally inspired art exhibits and interactive games there too.
Very cool.
I know places like the Games Institute has had art exhibits in the past, and art exhibits are ongoing. And right now there's a huge push towards VR as both a game mechanic and an art form. Mm-hmm. And most recently, when I was visiting an art gallery, I believe in Colorado or Glasgow, I don't remember. There was a VR installation about how people sort of treat their own media devices, their personal devices, their phone, their computer. And it was part of a very feminist exhibit. And I think that was an amazing way to use gaming as a chance to carry and spread a message.
Yeah, well, maybe you should do some VR in the future.
Maybe.
I would 100% play that right away. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm really honored.